Hey, well, good afternoon, fellow PMI team members. This is Brian Russell. I'm your Lunch and Learn coordinator for our Western Idaho chapter. A couple of things about logistics before we get started. Again, as a reminder, within this Hopin platform, on the right-hand side is a menu that can expand or collapse. Within that menu, you'll see a session area. For today's session, as you have questions for our presenter, please use that Q&A area under the session to post any questions, and then I'll make sure they're relayed over to Rob, our presenter today. As usual, shortly after the event, within a few days, we'll send out content in regards to what Rob is presenting today, a link to a recording, and the instructions for reporting PDU on the event. A reminder coming up next month for our Lunch and Learn on November 9th, we'll be hearing from Lorraine Lurie. Lorraine's going to be presenting on the 101 of visual thinking. If you had a chance to participate in the chapter's professional development day, Lorraine was one of the speakers at that event last month. So we'll be looking forward to hear from Lorraine again on November 9th. So with that, I'll make a quick introduction for our presenter today. Welcome, Rob Schade. He's with Strategyn. Rob's going to be talking with us about an introduction to jobs to be done architecture and innovation outcomes. Also attending with Rob is Brandon Cox, but I believe Rob's going to be the primary presenter for this. So with that, Rob, it's all yours.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having us today. I'll put this in full screen mode. All right, I have to swap. You're seeing my slides, right?
That's correct. Yes.
We are seeing your slides. Oh. Here we're seeing your presentation format. Slide and next slide, that format. So there you go. That's a better view.
There we go. Good. Always forget which monitor it's going to pop up on. Well, thank you very much for having us, Brandon, myself, and our company, Strategyn. A little bit about the company. I'll tell you a little bit about myself as well. We're an innovation consulting company. You say, well, why am I here speaking to a group of distinguished project management folks? Well, hopefully by the end of this, you'll understand why, because we've got some core principles of what we do that I think could be very powerful for the work that you do, because we're all trying to create value, be it within the organization around internal processes or external to the organization to our customers and our constituent audiences, be they members or paying customers or what have you. Everyone is trying to get something done. I'm going to share a model today that will hopefully help you understand how to get deeper and understand really what's going on with the customer and what they're trying to get done. So a little bit of my presentation will seem very innovation focused, and as you can imagine, it is, because we're an innovation consulting company. But let me just tell you, this model that I'm going to share with you has been applied both internal and external to the organization. I'll give you some examples of that as well. We've been doing this. Strategyn has been in business over 30 years, and we've been applying jobs theory and our outcome-driven innovation process model across all these industries. And why this is important is that if what I say is true about these being core principles of how we want to go create value for our constituent audiences, then it really needs to apply across every industry. Because then they're really not principles if they only apply in one spot and another. But these are broad, overarching principles that you can use in your day-to-day lives as project managers. So we're going to talk about innovation today. And innovation is devising solutions that address unmet customer needs. Now, you could clearly translate this into something around, not around solutions, but developing better processes or better models or methods that address internal constituent audience's needs, or external for that matter. It could be, you could be working on a project that's around streamlining onboarding of customers, or whatever the process or project area is, there is someone who's going to benefit from it, and they're going to have some goals that you want to help them achieve. Now, what happens in this world of innovation, and it could be in your space as well, is you really want to understand upfront what you're trying to achieve, because if you can do that, you know you're working on the right things. Downstream, we have processes for doing things right, but if we don't know what the right things are to do and we put them into our process, then we're doing things right that shouldn't be done perhaps at all. So our focus at Strategyn is really help you understand what are the right things to focus on. Now, maybe in your organization, I can tell you from a lot of the companies I've worked with, they're very much ideas driven, meaning people like ideas. People transact in ideas. They walk down the hall and say, hey, Francis, I've got this great idea. Let me tell you about it. Companies are not short of ideas, but that is one of the root causes of the problems. We are quick to jump to ideas before we fully understand the needs that we're trying to satisfy. So I think it's intuitively appealing to say, well, let's flip that equation. We should be needs first, not ideas first. And a lot of companies say they are. They say they're customer driven. But is that really true? And we know companies struggle here because there isn't agreement on what a need is. Now, we've done this poll numerous times, and it fluctuates between 85 or 80 and 90% that there is not agreement within a company on what a need is. Now, that's pretty important, right? We have to agree on what the customer is telling us. And when I say customer, it could be internal constituent audience. It doesn't have to be a paying customer, so to speak, but it's we have to, internally, we as an organization have to agree on what a customer need is. Well, jobs theory helps us understand this in a much more basic and fundamental way. So jobs theory, and let me just say, we did not invent this. Jobs theory is an economic principle. It describes the reason why customers come to you. Jobs theory simply states that customers buy products and services to get a job done. They don't care about the drill bit. They care about the hole. They don't care about the rental car. They care about getting to a destination without their own form of transportation. They're really trying to get some underlying thing done. Jobs theory helps clarify this for us. There's a great article in Harvard Business Review from 1960, and it's called, I think it's called Marketing Myopia. It's by Ted Levitt, a famed Harvard Business School professor. And he talks about how the railroad industry thought they were in the business of railroads, but they were really in the transportation business. See, people wanted to transport their goods from one section of the country to another. They didn't care if it was by truck or by car or by boat. They're looking for the best, fastest, cheapest solution. See, customers don't care about your products or services. They care about getting the job done. So if that's the case, and that's the reason they come to us, right? They come to us because they want to get this job done. They're going to pay us good money for our goods and services to help them get that job done better, faster, cheaper. Then we better be experts in the job. You see, the job tells us where to create value. It doesn't tell us how yet, but it tells us where. And I'm going to go through some examples on how we frame the where of creating value. The second part of this, the second principle I'd like you to know, and there's only two pieces of theory I really would love you to walk away with today. One is customers come to you for the underlying job that they're trying to get done. They don't care about your product, they care about the job. So we should be expert in the job. That's principle one. Job shows us where to create value. The second part of what I'm going to talk about today are the needs the customer have for getting the job done. Not on your product yet, just on getting the job done. See, these are metrics that people use to determine how well your product or service is helping them get the job done today. We call them outcomes because people are trying to achieve outcomes as they do the job. So this architecture looks like this. There's a core functional job, and there is a lot of outcomes that describe the perfect execution of that job. We're not talking about products now. We're not talking about products at all. This is solution agnostic. So let me give you an example. One of our clients is a big bank, and they said, we'd like for you to help us innovate our checking accounts and our savings accounts. We said, fine, but those are products. That's not what the customer's hiring for. What do the customers hire these solutions for? Well, to manage cash flow. That's the underlying job. So we studied the job, and that purple box would be manage monthly cash flow. And there was, I think, 85 needs that described the perfect execution of them doing that job of managing cash flow. So by knowing the where, the job, manage cash flow, and the how, all of these outcomes that describe the perfect execution of that job, again, irrespective of checking accounts or savings accounts, we were able to show them how they could innovate their checking accounts, savings accounts, debit cards, credit cards, short-term loans, because these are all solutions that are in service of that job. So framing the job is going to be very important, and we'll talk about that.
Hey,
So
Rob.
that's the end of the theory. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you stopped screen sharing, but we're not seeing anything on the share.
Oh, that's bad.
Hopefully it's just not me.
Let's see what happened there.
I was still seeing the presentation.
You were screen sharing and then it just went blank.
Let me just see here. All right, well, let's see. Let's try this again.
There we go.
Okay, well, sorry about that, but hopefully my narrative, and I'm going to go back a slide just in case people. This is the architecture that I really want you to understand, that you focus on a job, a core functional job, and there is a variety of outcomes that describe the perfect execution of that job. So think about this. And
Rob,
yes,
there was a question around, you had mentioned a Harvard Business Review article.
Yes.
And you can share this in the content afterwards, but is there a link? Do you have a link to that?
Yes, there's several articles that I'll put you in touch with after this presentation, but that one by Ted Levitt's a free download from Harvard Business Review. It's just it's a seminal article that he wrote now 62 years ago. Still applicable today. So that's the theory. That's what I was saying. This is all the theory. These two things, customers have a job to get done, focus on those, and understand their outcomes that describe the perfect execution of that job. Once you have that, you've got it for the life of whatever, however long the customer is doing that job. Now, if I showed you those outcomes on managing cash flow, you would see that those outcomes were good 75 years ago. They were good 25 years ago. They're good today. They'll be good 50 years in the future. Why? Because we're not talking about solutions. We're talking about the underlying job. And so as long as people are doing the job, you'll have the requirements for getting the job done. I'll give you some more examples of that in a little bit. So our process, this is what Strategyn does. We apply outcome-driven innovation, our process, to put into practice those two principles. That customers have a job to get done, and we want to go uncover their outcomes that describe the perfect execution of that job. Once we understand that, we know we can figure out where to go create value, where they're underserved today. We do things a little differently, and this is where I'm going to talk very much on the commercial side, but you're all in businesses that have a commercial side, although you may be working both on internal and external projects. But we're going to define the market differently. The market we're going to talk about today is around the customer and their job to be done, as opposed to the product. We're going to then uncover their outcomes. We're going to go interview them and get all of their needs for a particular job. We will then quantify those. And any of you marketing folks who see that this is just marketing 101, your organizations do this all the time. You do research and ask customers questions. We do the same thing. We do it a little differently, but it's the same general process. So we're going to quantify which of those 75 or 80 or 100 outcomes are very important and not well met today, because that's going to represent an opportunity for us. Then we're going to look at how the market naturally segments. Not sure how deep any of you are in the area of segmentation, but segmentation is an often misunderstood and misused tool. We use it for the purposes of finding out how the market naturally segments along needs. More on that later, but very, very important. And then lastly, we're going to formulate a strategy to put those unmet needs into whatever thing we're working on, improving our project, a process, or improving our product or service. What this does for the organization, it aligns the organization around a common understanding of the customer and their need. It's around the job, and it's around their outcomes that describe the perfect execution of the job. It answers all of these questions. We won't go through all these now, and you're welcome to have my deck afterward, but it is a unifying model to say, here's our customer, here's what they're trying to get done, here's how they measure us for value, and we better all know and agree upon these. So we frame a market differently. We say a market is not about a product or a vertical. A market is a group of people and the job they're trying to get done. So back to my bank example, they have all these different markets. They say that we have the checking account market, the savings account market, the debit card, the credit card. And I understand why they have them, because they're different products, but the market is much bigger than any one of those products. You don't want to label your market around a product that's going to go out of, it's no longer going to be around the CD market or the MP3 market. See, the market really here is not that. It's the music enthusiast who wants to listen to music. That, by definition, is much bigger than the streaming music market or the CD or the album market. But how about an internal focused definition? Hiring manager who wants to onboard new employees. This could be a product, or this could be a process internal to your organization that you're trying to improve upon. One of our clients used our ODI methodology to do just this. Giant manufacturing company had to hire 60,000 employees in 2 years. They had a massive process improvement around onboarding new employees. It's a job that people within their organization have, and they have a whole set of requirements, needs, outcomes they're trying to achieve as they do that job. Or how about an application developer who wants to develop an app? That's a pretty simple one, right? Or an employee who wants to progress in their career. Or a customer who wants to obtain support from a company. One of our other clients worked at a big technology company, and they did an internal study using ODI, outcome-driven innovation, on their helping people get support. And by looking where people struggled, they were able to increase their online presence and question and answer and database such that it saved them something like $100 million over the course of a year by diverting those calls away from call centers and to their online presence. It's this reorientation and this specificity that, which we're going to talk about in detail in a moment, which points to the areas of value that your customers want. See, we don't want to be the kettle maker and say, why did you buy our kettle? And someone will say, to boil water. But it's in service perhaps of a bigger job, and we want to understand that. So why do I use my checking account? Well, maybe it's to pay bills, but it's for other things as well. It's in service of a much bigger job, and we want to understand that because it frees us from the confines of what we've been, it frees us from the confines of the product, because if we're always focused on the product, we're never going to look beyond that product. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go capture all of the needs for that particular job. So how do we do that? Well, we go talk to customers. Customers are not experts in the product. They're not engineers. They're not application developers. They're not business process improvement or efficiency experts. What they are, though, is expert in the job that they're trying to get done. They can tell you when the job goes poorly or when it goes well. That's what we're going to go talk to them about. And there's a series of steps that every job goes through, a beginning, a middle, and an end. So we use this thing called a job map to help map out what the customer is trying to get done. Here's another article you might want to look at. It's a free download from Harvard Business Review as well. We published this in 2008. It just tells you the power of just thinking about your job from this perspective, from this process perspective. So let's go through an example. Maybe the job of listening to music. We have these steps. We have to assess what situation we're going to listen to. Am I going out for a run, or are we going to do a barbecue in the backyard? We have to gather the music that we want. We have to order put the music in the order we want for listening, perhaps. We might confirm the music plan, like, is this really what we want for the barbecue? We listen, we monitor the experience, we modify, that song doesn't have the lyrics I want for the barbecue. Let's skip that one. And then conclude and assess it. Maybe I change my playlist or do whatever I have to do to assess how my job of listening to music went. You see, as innovators, again, innovators from many different perspectives, what we're trying to do is help our customer get the job done across all steps faster, better, and cheaper. And you see, when new solutions like the iPod came out or in streaming music came out, it helps the consumer or the customer get the job done better and better. Our role as innovators is help them get the job done as perfectly as we possibly can. So back to the theory real quick. The job, core functional job, lots of steps and many outcomes that describe the perfect execution of those steps. There might be 10 or 15 steps and maybe 75 to 125 outcomes. It really depends on the complexity of the job. And I can talk to you on, we've done incredibly simple ones like cleaning your teeth and cleaning your hands. Did those for Unilever and Colgate respectively. But very complicated ones like doing an appendectomy or a lobectomy or open heart surgery. The model works for all of these. There's a syntax that we use to describe the need, because we want to control how we measure these in our quantitative. So we have a syntax for that. Syntax that we know pulls out irregularity and variability in the survey. And that's what we're trying to do, is reduce the amount of noise in any survey that we put out there. So you'll see needs like this. Now, as you read these needs, you'll notice that there aren't any solutions in here. It's nothing about a streaming music, not about Spotify or albums. If people are into vinyl or CDs, there's nothing in here about that. These needs are irrespective of solutions. So as I said, the set of needs for listening to music or managing cash flow are good as they were good today. They were good 25 years ago. They'll be good 25 years in the future until we no longer do that job. So let's go to one that's maybe a little more sympathetic to some of the areas that you all work. This is a job map for developers. Developers go through a series of steps to develop an application. This has been redacted and reduced a little bit just for simplicity. It's a little bit more complicated than this, but not much. You have to define what your development tasks are. You have to gather the requirements. You have to architect the solution, confirm that the architecture is going to achieve its goals, prepare the development environment, write the code, debug the code, verify the code satisfies the requirements, and then deploy the code. Now, for each of these steps, I'm going to do something here real quickly because I see I've got one of my next slides is hidden, and I don't want it to be hidden. So bear with me. Okay. So So each one of these job steps has a series of outcomes under it. And how did we get those? We went and spoke to developers, and we said, when you're defining the development tasks, what are the things that you need to do? We also say what things make it hard, problematic, time-consuming, error-prone. They're able to tell us what slows them down, what prevents perfection. See, to achieve perfection, you have to remove the imperfections. So for this particular step, step number 1, defining the development task, there are 5 outcomes that describe that step. The next one, gather requirements, there's 7 outcomes. Architect the solution, there's 5. In total, there is 95 outcomes that describe the job of developing an application. Develop an application. Once we know these, if you look at these needs, these needs were good 10 years ago, they'll be good 10 years into the future. Be it on the cloud or on the desktop, mobile apps, it doesn't matter. Now, I'm going to take you one step further to a very complicated job to be done. This job is called extract oil from an unconventional reservoir. Now, I've highlighted one need in the beginning, or in the middle, just so you can read it, for no other purpose than that, just to pop that one out. But look how specific these needs are. Look how precise they are. Now, we're not petroleum engineers. So how do we get this level of specificity? Well, we talk to petroleum engineers. They tell us this. We're just listening and hearing it and then reciting it back to them. They go, yes, I'm trying to minimize the time it takes to determine the amount of surface area the fracture must create to achieve the desired level of production. Fantastic. We confirm it, we move on. After 8, 10, 12 interviews, we've gotten all the needs, whether it be 75 or 150. Doesn't matter. Because we are speaking to experts on the job and they're telling us how the job needs to be done. Not their solutions, although they'll try to drag those solutions into the conversation, but we steer clear of them. We use a solution to get us back to the need. So now that we've captured this, we have what the job is and what all the outcomes are for that job. Our clients use these for decades to create value because the job that they're doing is the same job that they were doing a decade ago, just with new technologies, new solutions. So the next thing we'll do is we'll take all of those needs and we're going to quantify them to figure out the areas of opportunity for value creation. We say an opportunity is an unmet need, meaning it's an outcome that's very important, but not well satisfied. The bigger the gap, the bigger the opportunity. So we'll do a questionnaire and we'll get 2 points of data from them. How important is that item and how well are they satisfied today with the solutions that they use? So it really helps us understand not only where the opportunity is, but it also points to what they're using and how satisfied they are with it. So it gives us a baseline for us to take a look at and create value based upon what we know about what's happening in the market, other solutions, and what we offer. So our goal is to create this landscape of opportunity to show exactly where a need is unmet. This one happens to be very important and not well satisfied. So we've got a score of 13.2. We know this is something we need to go after. And that's our scoring mechanism, but it shows you exactly where the market is underserved, overserved, and appropriately served in the middle, and some things that you have to do because they're table stakes, meaning they're very important and they're also well satisfied, but they're so important that you have to do them. You have to do them right. So you could do this for a big internal project that you were doing on onboarding employees or whatever that job is. You can do internal surveys to get this data. Now, the one thing that's super important, certainly on the external side of this, is no markets are homogeneous, right? No customers are all alike. Customers don't agree on which needs are most important or poorly satisfied. You're never going to build one product to solve for the whole market. It's never going to happen. So what we want to do is we want to understand how people naturally segment. And we're not going to do a segmentation that's based upon demographics or psychographics. We're going to do it based upon their needs. because that's what we're trying to figure out is where do they struggle? Different groups struggle along different dimensions. So we may do a survey and the general market may look like this, but a market, this is the average of the market, not the market as it is in reality broken out. So for example, a market like the one I just showed you may come out like this within a segmentation, meaning this is all of the needs represented 3 different times by 3 different groups of customers. 24% of this market is very underserved. 57% is appropriately served, but with some underserved elements in the dark corner. And 19% of it is basically over or appropriately served. Now, this scatter plot that you're seeing comes from a client of mine, and that client has been in this business for 100 years, very well known in the retirement space. Now, you think in 100 years they'd get the job done perfectly, but that's just not the case. 24% of the market that they're going after is wildly underserved. Once we showed them what the needs were and who those people were in that market, they knew that they had to come up with a new platform to serve them. Their current platform for serving them was just not going to cut it. See, that's why you have to understand segmentation, because your strategy is based upon creating value for these buckets of customers. Now, within a internal, let's say, IT project, maybe you can have different solutions, but you can have different ways to communicate the value of what you've just done to people based upon their different priorities of those needs. That's what we do when we're looking externally, is we're going to create products and services that help us monetize our products and services the best we possibly can based upon how this market naturally segments. So a market like this, we might have 2 different strategies. We have to do a highly differentiated product of great value. It's going to be higher priced as well to represent that greater value. But we might also create a very low cost one with a lot less features that's very disruptive. Now, some companies are afraid of taking this dual approach to growth because they're afraid the disruptive product will suck out the customers that will pay the higher amount for the more fully featured one. That's not going to happen. Look at the difference in these 2 groups. They're radically different. Now, if it was a little bit closer in there, you might consider that. But this one, and this is from a real client, they did exactly this. They had a differentiated strategy, medical device industry, a highly differentiated strategy, much higher price product than a very stripped down one. And they went for the low cost, 21% of the market, low cost, low feature solution as well. Very, very successful. You could only know to do this by understanding the customers, their needs for the job, and understand how they're segmented. Here's another one. This was an interesting one. This one is in the all-terrain vehicle space. Now, what we found was we did a willingness to pay analysis here. We asked them, would they be willing to pay more for the product or service to help them get the job done? This group said no, the dominant one. And this was a market that they had in the sustaining and the purple and the green, the purple dots and the green triangles here, they had a dominant market share. But in the blue squares, they did not have a good market share. And so what we did was say, if you want to create value here, you've got to take a dominant position, meaning you've got to create more value for a lower cost. And they saw what the needs were. They saw who the customer was and the context in which they were using the product. They go, we think we know what we can do. We can strip out some costs over here, but add value over here and produce the product at the same price and more value, or even maybe a little bit less. But whatever they did, I forget what they did on the exact pricing. They did significantly more value without having to raise the price. They started to grow market share in this space almost immediately. Again, they could only do this by understanding where they needed to prioritize their innovation efforts. So I'll finish up here with just a couple more slides. At the end of one of these projects, what we're trying to accomplish for our client is to give them a roadmap of things to work on. We are reducing or replacing opinion with hard data. This is one of the most important things in product development, because if you don't have this sort of quantitative data, it's going to be someone's opinion on what they should go do next. No company is short of ideas, so they're just overloaded with ideas, and people saying, well, I think this idea, and I think this idea, and well, I don't know, and opinion rules the day. We want to eliminate opinion, replace it with hard evidence, and then say, here are the things you should do, and in the order you should do them. So let's first better position the products that we have. Let's tweak our products along the dimensions that we know, these opportunities that we've identified. Let's fill gaps in our product portfolio, and then let's maybe make some R&D investments for areas we don't have the capability. One of our projects should last a company 5 to 10 years for growth, because they can't get to all of the needs. If there's 30 opportunities, you're not necessarily going to be able to do those in a short order. So we're going to prioritize those based upon the organization's capabilities and appetite for growth. Quick example, we helped Arm & Hammer with a product that they were struggling with. We redefined the market. We identified a lot of needs. The first thing they did was they just changed their messaging and positioning. They didn't change their product at all. They just changed how they communicate value to the market. And they had 30% revenue growth the first year. Now, this was something they could have never discovered on their own, because they were looking at the market in a way that was fundamentally narrowing. And what we did was we broadened it. We made the job executor a different job executor, and we made the job much broader. Now, they have because of this, they have so many opportunities. They have at least a decade's worth of growth in the innovation space around this job, but they got 30% growth just from changing the messaging and positioning. Another client I'll tell you about, because I think this could be interesting to the people who are doing internal focused project management. We did this for a pharmaceutical company called the Medicines Company. In 2019, they were bought for a 41% premium over current market value. And Clive said, he thanked us for our contribution because it was bringing a new way of thinking to their business. And he pushed this model all the way through the business, both externally from the commercial side, but both internally on supply chain and how they ordered their business. So this company bought this model hook, line, and sinker, in the sense of they were in, and we trained probably 150 people there. And this was the way they thought about basic processes, whether internal or external. So I'll just finish up here. What I just described was one of our projects, and we project manage these projects for our clients. But as I talked about, we talk to our customers, customer immersion. We go interview them. We make sure we validate the job to be done, and we capture all of their outcomes on that job. We then quantify them. We then survey a representative sample so we understand which ones are the biggest opportunities. So we're trying to discover opportunities through our quantitative analysis. Then we formulate our innovation strategy based upon those segments. We want to know who to go create value for and along which dimensions. And then we deploy it, and we help our clients build a deployment plan, because this affects the product strategy, the marketing, the collateral, how we're going to communicate to the value to the market, the sales strategy, the R&D strategy, where they have to make long-term investments. All of this is a result of really understanding your customer, what they're trying to get done, understand all of the metrics that they're going to measure on getting that job done, quantifying them, and figuring out which of those things we should focus on. The level of specificity ensures that we get really good discrimination when the customers take these surveys, meaning they can say, yes, this is very important, or no, it's not. Vague needs lead to vague results. These are incredibly specific, as I showed you on that oil and gas one and in the development application one. And this is what this model does. It helps you uncover what the customer is trying to get done and those precise needs that will help you understand where you can go create value. So that's all I have today. I hope that was useful, and I really look forward to questions that you have. I see one about the link. Yes, we'll do that, but
Okay. Yeah, I see there was some content under chat. Okay. No questions under there. Any questions from the audience that Rob can address? Rob, I thought this was very interesting. How does, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, just what's your
sure.
they go about that?
Let me, I should have stopped on this page. And let me just.
Okay, there's your contact info. I see that. And we'll share this presentation with the team as well.
I'd love to hear from some of the project managers out here. Is this congruent with the way you think of the world and the way you flesh out the projects that you have to work on? Is this sympathetic to what you do?
Rob, there's a question in the Q&A right now as people are thinking about your question. It says you mentioned that customers are not equal. How do we determine which to focus on?
Yeah. So no market is homogeneous. And so what we want to see is what causes the heterogeneity in a market. So let me give you an example. We did a surgical study where surgeons struggled along certain dimensions. And one of the things we found was the surgeons that had a larger case load of morbidly obese patients struggled along certain dimensions. The surgery was the same, but the complications due to the size of the patient made the surgery much more, it took a lot longer. So we did not know before the study, just from doing the general interviews about this, it did get unlocked in the quantitative, showing where they struggled and why they struggled. Another example, a financial services firm of ours, investment firm, they had a pre-existing segmentation that broke its market into 6 different groups. And it was typically along demographic characteristics, age, income. We did our segmentation. Well, in their segmentation, there were some opportunities, but not some really great ones. Then we did our segmentation, all these great ones popped up. Now, why is that? Well, it's because their segmentation was splitting people apart that had the same needs. They were challenged with the same needs. See, when we segment, we're segmenting people regardless of their age. So we had millennials and pre-retirees in the same bucket because they were struggling along the same dimensions. So before this study, they wouldn't have thought that. They said, well, we're going to create a product for millennials and another one for pre-retirees. And we said, not so fast. Look at these insights. These people are struggling in this area along those same dimensions. We think you need to include both of them. And they ultimately did. So we did, when you say, which ones to focus on, we did that quantitatively. If you want to do it a priori beforehand, then you're going to make some assumptions on why your product or service is better for a given market than another. And you may have commercial reasons for doing it because they have more willing to spend in that particular area. There's reasons to do that. And then you can apply this after the fact. But what we wanted to do for our financial services client was take a broad look at all of the market. And we did not limit it by income, although the investment income and asset size, because They were looking to expand beyond their current footprint, which was higher income and higher investable assets. So they chose to take the filters off. You can filter before based upon some of your commercial aspects, but what we say in big, broad consumer markets, you don't want to do that. You typically want to take a look at the entire market, because you get a snapshot of that, and then you can still focus on the folks you want to focus on, but at least it gives you an idea, like in that retirement space, that one segment, that 24% that was wildly underserved, our client heretofore did not want to go after it. But they do now, because they know where they're underserved and how they might be able to serve them today because of new technologies to enable them to adequately serve them at a much lower cost model. So there are commercial reasons, and then there are quantitative reasons that will show you who you should focus on.
Rob, could you talk quickly, and it wasn't a question specifically, but could you talk quickly about the importance of talking to the actual job executor? I'm thinking the tax preparation software example, right?
Yes.
Understanding the true job to be done and talking to the client.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, Brandon. We had a client who makes tax preparation software. And so when we talked to our client and said, well, what's the job you're helping your customer get done? They say, prepare taxes. So we'll take that hypothesis from our client and we'll work with them to develop it. And then we'll go talk to customers. So we don't take that as, that's not law yet. We have to go validate it with customers. And so when we validate it with customers, they said, that's not the job. That's just a small part of our job. Our job is really to create and implement tax saving strategies for our clients. So the job was bigger than just the preparation. And so we went back to our client and go, we really need to study it at this level, not that level, because you're looking at it like this. Your customers are looking at it like this. That alone unlocked a ton of value for them. It gave them permission to look beyond the areas that they were traditionally helping them with, which was just in tax preparation. So all of this is being validated with the customer because they're expert in what they're trying to get done and how they measure value.
Thank you.
Rob, how would you take the same approach, or how is the approach different when we're thinking about an internal customer?
Yeah. I'm going to pull up this slide here.
As you're doing that, because I'm thinking about within my organization, we're serving internal customers to help them deliver upon, their outcomes for the internal and external people that they serve. So we're helping them install software or a data integrations or a process improvement.
Yeah. So what I showed you is a high fidelity end-to-end project that we would do for a customer who's investing in growing in that particular market. But how would you apply this in a light manner? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to frame out what is the job that you're helping your customer with. And you want to make sure that you're looking at it a broad enough perspective. I said, I made the little example of the tea kettle maker. He said, well, why are you doing this job? It's to boil water. But in service of what? So that's what we're really trying to get at. So we want to make sure we frame the job right, not prepare taxes, but develop and deploy tax strategies, tax savings strategies. So you want to frame that right. That's the first thing. That opens up your view, your perspective on the particular area you're going to help them with. Then build out a simple job map. You can use this as an archetype, this article and model, but go tell them, like, what's the first thing you have to do? And the second thing, the third thing. Now, they're going to start to try to tell you what they do today. That's not exactly what we're going to try to get done. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard of journey mapping. Journey mapping can be very, very confusing. What we're doing is job mapping. Job mapping is looking at that core functional job and saying, ideally, what are each of the steps you need to go through to get the job done? And anytime someone's telling you, well, I've got to go back to this step to do something here, then you have to say, okay, something's not working here, because every optimized job should be linear if we had the information. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to model the perfect execution of the job. So if I showed you the job of invest to grow wealth, you would see that there's no loops, although people are looping all the time. They're like, oh, I go look at stocks, and then I come back here and I look at I think about what my risk profile is, and then I do this, and then I go, that's not the optimal. So what we do is we talk to them about the optimal, and we don't really burden them with this. We just say, well, what do you have to do first, and then second and third. So build out this job map. This job map will then will give you a guidance on how you discuss their needs related to executing that job. So let's say the job is you're helping the IT organization upgrade a desktop software. I know no one has desktop software anymore, but let's just use that example. You're going to go to the IT person, the job executor, and say, what do you have to do? And you try to build out this optimized job map. And then you go to each of them and you say, well, what do you need to do at each of these steps? Once you build out the job map and you capture those outcomes, you don't have to go quantify them. Use that as your rule book, as your guidepost to building out the process, the project that you're doing to help improve that process. We're going to try to get all 75 of these outcomes done. As we're doing it, we'll say, we're doing this step. Here are the 5 outcomes. Does our solution do what we're trying to do? Does it address each of these? And we just self-assess. That alone will give you a much better view of you and how you are satisfying the needs for that particular job. So I say just do step 1. Build out the job map and get the outcomes. Don't even quantify them. What you're doing in the quantification, in the model I just shared, is you're assessing how well you can get each of those 75 outcomes done with the solution that you've come up with. And it's a very fast way of getting that done.
Thanks. That is helpful. There's another question from Chuck about for a job such as onboarding, any suggestions for applying this model across multiple departments such as HR, IT, and functional departments?
Sure. So let's say the job is onboarding new employees. You want to go to the job executor who's onboarding them. So at HR may not be onboarding employees unless they're onboarding people within the HR department. You're looking for the hiring manager. Who's onboarding people? When I hired Brandon, I had to onboard Brandon, right? I was the job executor there. So the reason I share this with you, because you put HR in there, you think of HR as sort of the onboarding specialist, but really they may just be helping the actual departmental manager to onboard people. So you want to make sure you're getting the job executor in that space. But so for IT and functional departments, say it's manufacturing or marketing, accounting, it doesn't really matter. The needs are going to be the same whether across departments. Now, some departments are going to struggle more than others because they have a more complex or maybe a more, they may be much larger or have more complexity. Manufacturing may be harder because of all the rules and regulations that the employees might have to follow on the manufacturing floor. But the needs will be the same. And what you'd want to do is, like the way we would do this as an external project, is we'd quantify them across those different departments to look to see if there are any differences within those departments. Sometimes there may be. We don't know that beforehand, but if we have a hypothesis that there is going to be some difference in priorities across these departments, then we're going to quantify them across those departments to validate or refute that hypothesis. So a job will go across multiple functional areas, a job like onboarding, if everyone is onboarding new employees. Hope that was helpful, Chuck.
Well, all right, let me see. I see there's also a comment under chat from Maddie. The detail you've provided on framing focus will be beneficial in guiding outcomes, discussions for stakeholders who are stuck on solutions. Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me just say one quick thing about that. Customers will tell you in our work, the people we're interviewing, the customers of our customer, I should say, when we're interviewing them, they'll want to talk about solutions sometimes. They'll say, well, I use this. And we'll say, okay, well, that's fantastic. Why do you use that as opposed to this? You see what we've just done there? We've gotten away from the solution and we've gotten down basically to a need. That's what we're trying to get to. We don't care about the solution, but we do care about what the underlying factor is. So while they'll want to talk about that, we'll divert them back very gently by saying, okay, that's fantastic. Why would you do this over that? What does it benefit you by doing that? And then you go down maybe even deeper. Well, why is that important? So why does it benefit you? Why is that important? What we're doing is we're drilling down to get to the underlying outcome. So yes, as you speak to the job map and the set of steps, and you ask them what can make it go wrong, time-consuming, problematic, you're out of the solution space, you're in the job step space. So that should help you at the one level. And if they bring the solutions in, you divert them back gently to the reason why they're doing that and what they hope to achieve out of it, and you get them back to this non-solution space, back to the need space, problem space.
Okay. Excellent. Very good. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour here. So Rob and Brandon, I do want to just, on behalf of the project management chapter, I do want to say thanks again for taking the time to prepare and present for today. And to those in the audience, we will be sharing the content, including Rob's contact information, should you want to reach out to him. Thanks again, everybody, and hope you have a good rest of your day. See you, Rob. See you,
Thanks,
Brandon.
everybody. Take care.